evening. I would like to call the October 21st Board of Education meeting to order. Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Mr. Newmoth?
Here.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Here.
Vice President Darrow is absent and President McClelland are absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now into our meeting agenda. Mr. Sawyers, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
to do the board minutes first.
Okay. The minutes were sent out prior to tonight's meeting. If there are no modifications, may I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Bush, Mr. Newmoth. Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoth?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes. Now for the meeting agenda. Mr. Sawyers, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Mr. Newmoth?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. McClelland arrived at 5:31 and will be noted in the minutes. Take the lead.
I think I spent a land speed, or I made a land speed record for Marietta.
Okay.
We're on superintendent items.
Oh, communications to the board, superintendent's items, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClelland. I just have a couple of things I want to say. First, congratulations to New Albany High School girls golf team. They are the state champions for the second year in a row. We will invite them to come to a board meeting for public recognition, but they did an outstanding job over the weekend and actually were very victorious, set some course records, both individually and as a team, and we'll celebrate them at a future board meeting. But congratulations to the girls high school golf team for becoming our second year winners of a state championship. The other message I want to share, and it's really for the public announcement because there's no formal announcement forthcoming beyond what's been posted briefly on social media. It's really to recognize Dr. Ralph Johnson. Dr. Johnson was superintendent in New Albany Plain Local School District from 1992 to 2005. He passed away recently. The family, in honor of the family, we're not holding any public recognition beyond just announcing his passing. We are talking internally within the school district on what potentially we can do here on our school campus to honor the legacy and developing the campus in cooperation with the New Albany Community Foundation with Mr. Moore. And I'll share additional information about that as we look towards the future. But I will speak about Dr. Johnson this evening at State of the Schools because of the legacy impact he had in actually building and actually executing the master plan across the entire learning campus. Going through actually former file cabinets and pictures, and Mr. Galloway helped secure them. Most of the pictures we actually have of Dr. Johnson are actually in construction mode. So he was the superintendent that was here for the majority of the build of the actual school campus. So most of the pictures we actually have of Dr. Johnson, he's actually standing on a construction site in dirt, at a machine, at a public meeting, or with a shovel in his hand, turning over dirt for the groundbreaking at a specific event. So clearly his legacy now exists across the school campus, and he will be greatly missed in his unfortunate passing. Lastly, State of the Schools is this evening. This is an abbreviated board meeting. We apologize for the earlier time, but we're hosting the community at 6:30 at the McCoy to celebrate our 2018-19 outstanding academic achievement and improvements across our entire school campus, and look forward to everyone's participation. That will also be posted on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is an update from PLE.
Joe Lambert, Intervention Specialist at the high school. Here are the PLE Local Education Association staff highlights of October 2019. The preschool team took a field trip to Lynn Fruit Farm on October 14, 2019 to meet a requirement for a step up to quality. Parents joined their children at the farm. They learned about the life cycle of an apple tree, how to pick apples, and they were able to pick a bag full to take home. This field trip allowed students to have an authentic learning experience that will help them to connect the thematic academic unit at school to a real-world example, form relationships, and how to understand the world around them. Amy, Glenn, Bridget, Vilbig, and Nate McCarville attended the National Certified Training Program for Nonviolent Intervention Training to become certified trainers for our district. This program is considered the global standard for crisis prevention and intervention training. With care, welfare, safety, and security being the core philosophy, everyone is trained in proven strategies, which gives the service providers and educators the skills to safely respond to various levels of risk behavior while balancing the responsibilities of care. This program focuses on how to recognize behavior as a form of communication, how to prevent it from escalating, how to respond appropriately if safety is threatened, and how to minimize the chances of it happening again. Brooke Shackelford, librarian for the students in grades 7 through 12, attended the Ohio Educational Library Media Association Conference on October 3rd and 4th. The conference offered learning on many topics, including new literature for middle grades and young adult audiences, ways to increase book circulation, using Google tools for efficient library record keeping, trauma-informed best practices for librarians, and new research tools from Info Ohio. Brooke will share what she has learned with staff and students and can use the information to improve the library procedures and instruction. Pam McDowell and Kristen Howe offered a clay session to the primary staff after school. Staff were able to decompress, socialize, and get creative, making fish sculptures while learning clay construction techniques. Sandy Reed presented at the Ohio Council for the Social Studies State Conference last week. She was sharing the National Geographic GeoInquiry process. GeoInquiry is an exciting integrated project-based critical thinking skills in action process that connects real-world challenges and National Geographic explorers to the classroom. We currently have 30 teachers across the district participating in coursework on the GeoInquiry process. This activity will improve students' learning by providing them an opportunity to participate in authentic learning that empowers them to act and make a positive difference in their community and world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now to discussion items this evening, and the first discussion item, board liaison reports. Anyone has a report tonight? With nothing, we'll move on to number 2, which is the 5-year forecast first reading. Ms. Jenkins.
I'm going to speak quickly because we have a state of the schools and I've been given 5 minutes. So this is the elevator speak. As you are aware, we have to do a fall forecast, and that used to be due October 31st. It is now November 30th. That's new this year. That thinking is that if someone has a levy on the ballot in November, they wouldn't have to refile their 5-year forecast. I'm doing that this year, so we won't be approving the forecast until November, but next year I'll probably move it back to October. If we don't have a levy on the ballot, I feel like it's supposed to be a projection, and we shouldn't have half the year over before we file that, just so you know. Then we have to update the forecast and refile that with the Department of Education by May 31st each year. The forecast must be updated anytime there is a material difference, change, and you can refile a forecast at any time. There's no limit. Our statement of purpose is to create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. That purpose drives every decision we make, including the financial decisions. As a reminder, we went through this in August, but where did we end our fiscal year last year? Revenues were up $2.3 million. Expenses on line 4.5 were down $3 million. And then we transferred $3.4 million into permanent improvement to help offset some of the capital improvements that we know we needed. We're going to go through all of that at the State of the Schools, but if you'll remember, we've done major sections of the high school in 2 phases, including the athletic buildings. We've done the primary building. Those were actually sooner than what we had anticipated in our capital plan, so we've had to help offset some of those costs, because if you remember, the 1.25 mil permanent improvement levy only brings in $1.1 million a year, and we've only been collecting that since 2018. So positive variance in the 5-year forecast of $3 million, and that's at the end of fiscal 19. So if we look back at October of 2015 forecast at the fiscal 19 year, we had projected to spend $75.9 million in fiscal 19. Because of the levy failure and those reductions that were enacted, and then on top of that, the financial goal that we've put into place, And watching our spending, we actually ended fiscal year 19 spending $58.9 million, so a significant decrease. That spending level is actually just above fiscal 15 spending level. So moving on to fiscal year 20, in total, our revenue, I'm projecting it to be up about $2.4 million. The majority of that is in real estate, either new abatements that are rolling onto the tax duplicate, or income tax sharing and public utility personal property tax increases. Anytime there's a change in real estate, it actually affects 3 lines. So it's looking at line 1.01, which is real estate. It's looking at line 1.05, which is property tax allocation, where we receive homestead and rollback taxes. And then line 1.06, which is income tax sharing. That is up with the city of New Albany based on new abatements that are coming on, and they're hitting their ramp-up period. Usually the abatement has about 3 years for the companies to ramp up, and then they start that income tax sharing with us. So that's why we see those increases in revenue. Then moving on to expenditures, we're up $1.78 million over the May forecast, but you'll see that the bulk of that is in a transfer. So because we had additional revenue and reduced our spending, and we know that we have a playground, 2 pieces of our playground that need replaced, and we're looking at that. We're not sure whether or not we're going to have partners to help with that. And we won't have the same level of grant funding that we had for the Early Learning Center. We've decided that it is prudent to try to move some of those monies from general fund into permanent improvement. If we did not make that transfer, we actually would be about $850,000 less expense based from May to October. The bulk of the reduction you can see is in the personnel line, $1.2 million, and that's part of our goal from last year. And we reduced our expenses by at least that much in payroll last year, so that's going to affect the future years in fiscal year 20. Material revenue assumptions in the future, Franklin County property value update is in 2020. So we did a reappraisal in 2017, and if you remember, we received about 11.2% increase in property values. Now, House Bill 920 reduces that, but on inside millage, you would still see an increase in real estate collections. So fast forward to 2020, when the Franklin County Auditor will do an update, we're actually hearing now that they're saying county-wide about 20% increase because the sales to market ratio has just continued to increase. And I'm not sure that it was adjusted enough back in 2017. I don't think that anyone expected it to continue to grow. They were expecting about a 15 to 20% last year. We received in 2017. So I've included 12.5% increase because I don't think New Albany will get to the 20%. Some of our areas are exploding in their market sales, but we also have some of the higher end homes that are not selling as quickly. So use 12.5% increase there. So that's another piece that would affect that real estate line. We have no funding formula. The state basically said you will receive, all school districts in the state of Ohio, all 605, receive the same funding in fiscal 20 as they received in fiscal 19, and they completely did away with the formula, so there is no formula. There is pending legislation, House Bill 305, which is a Patterson legislation. We've talked a little bit about that. It has changed a bit since they originally introduced it during the biennial budget process. They have since in June they introduced the standalone bill. They did start hearings, I believe, last week on that. In its current form, I don't expect us to see any material changes in our funding. I don't know whether this will actually go forward and become the budget. I don't know if we'll actually have a formula, but those are things that we definitely are going to have to continue to watch. Material expenditure assumptions. Our 2 union negotiated agreements expire in June of 2020, so we will be negotiating. We have OPSI, our classified union, in April, and then our teachers union in May. I don't think that we'll know the outcome of that to include that any change, if any, in the May forecast, so we likely won't see anything impacting the forecast with that until next October. We do have new staffing projections in the forecast. They have not changed since May. Those are the same, and then we do include a reduction in health insurance for the current year. We received a 1% increase in premiums as opposed to the 5% that we were projecting. That's based solely on really good claims, so that could always change year to year, but we've had a good run with claims. So the overall impact of the 5-year forecast between where we ended in fiscal 19 and then the changes in the current year is $11.9 million positive impact over the 4-year period. We're not doing 5 years because fiscal 24 wasn't in the May forecast. That's just rolled over now. We do still, even with all of the changes and efficiencies we've made, we do begin to spend more than we bring in next year by $2.1 million. And we do have a $3.9 million ending cash balance in the 5th year of this forecast. Items that we need to continue to monitor and discuss are enrollment growth, new residential development. We still do not know the impact of the Little Turtle community. We continually reach out, and as soon as we know that, we will work it into the forecast. Again, union negotiations, we won't know that until April, May timeframe. And then we do have the continuous improvement plan goal that is not incorporated into the 5-year forecast, but if you will recall, it is to reduce the current year expenditures by $605,000 or 1% at least. Impact on future levy timing and millage. With this forecast, I don't anticipate needing to look at any kind of a new operating levy until at least fiscal year 23 or beyond. My goal is to push that off as long as possible. I think that's everyone's goal. But all things remaining equal, no crazy, real estate issues, anything like that. So, questions, comments? About
Ms. Jenkins,
stats?
2 questions. One is on slide 5. If you could go back to that. Just want to make sure I understood the one with the blue bar chart. There you go. So is this red line, this is total actual expenditures?
Correct. The red line is, yes.
Including the 75 million?
The 75, no, the red line the blue line are the actual expenditures. And the red line is what we had projected, so the 75.9 million was what we thought we would spend in fiscal 19. 58.9 is what we actually spent.
So, just so I'm clear, so each year, so October 16, 17, 18, 19,
Those
that
are
number is the projected 2019 number.
Correct.
Okay, and then the blue is the revenues. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I apologize, because I'm looking at blue is actual revenue, and then if I look at October 2019, 62 million is what we spent this year. Is that pointing to the red line, total expenditures?
58.9 is what we spent this year from line 4.5 without the,
We were
So 60
projected in October to spend 62 million. We spent 58 million.
Okay, that makes sense.
so revenue was about 64.6 million in fiscal 19. So the bar is the revenue.
So revenues as projected, that October 2019, the last column, second to the left column to the right, that's the projection.
Correct.
And you're saying that we ended up spending roughly
58 million.
3 million less,
Correct.
and our projections were slightly more, our revenue was slightly more than projected. Thank you. And then, thank you for that. The second question I had is on your slide 8. You mentioned the Franklin County property value update.
Yes.
So for the 5 years going forward, could you just maybe clarify the 12.5%, what that projection is? I just want to make sure we don't get too aggressive. I'm trying to understand what.
So basically what the Franklin County auditors have started to say to districts are that we're expecting to have an increase in property values by 20%. That's countywide. So if you're looking at areas like the Dublin Bridge Park area, or you're looking at the Grandview, is it Grandview Heights or? Yard. Those areas, the last time, like the Grandview Yard saw about a 29% increase. So if you're looking at that county-wide, that's not gonna be us, so I wouldn't put 20% in. But in 2017, they were projecting about 15%, 15 to 18% is I think what they ended up projecting. We received 11.2%. So if they're looking at 20%, then 12.5% feels like that would be an okay number to use. House Bill 920 is gonna roll everything back that was voted on, except the 4.5 inside mills. So it's not a huge increase to our revenue.
Do you happen to recall what we projected in 2017 when we ended up getting 11.2?
I'm not sure, I would have to look at that, but no one was expecting that to be as high as it was either, so I'm sure I was probably far less than the 11.2. I was probably at 5 or 6%.
And if we flip into a recession, everybody starts challenging values, that can go away.
Correct, and usually when those things happen, school districts are the last ones to feel that, because it's not until people start getting those tax bills and everything's a year behind, so you would have paid the previous year, so it's the further year out. If we see a recession, clearly we can update the 5-year forecast and adjust it.
Thank you.
I want to clarify, because I guess this is probably where you're going, is even with a projected 12% increase, that doesn't mean massive revenue increase to the budget. I mean, we still have to be very fiscally responsible.
Correct, because House Bill 920 is not going to let us have a massive increase. It's only on the inside village part, which is a fraction.
That's right, and we're making our best projection that we think 12.5 out of a projected 20% by the county will stick, but it's a projection over 4 years. And we may not get all of that, and then further, if you have a recession, you have people challenging values, you're not gonna get any of that potential.
That's, yeah.
The challenges will happen.
They will, well, delinquent taxes will happen, so beyond the challenges to people's property basically impacts other resident property. So if your property is reduced, then the next year, everyone else's property may be increased to offset that. That's House Bill 920. Where we would probably see the impact is people not paying their taxes and having a delinquent tax. And those collections would be down. That's more where we would see that. Any other questions?
Thanks. That brings us to the third discussion item, which is board policy, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. Board of Education members, the policies that are presented are the policies for second reading. I spoke about them with the change in federal language from the federal statute related to tobacco at our last Board of Education meeting that were presented again this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. They were not changed since the last meeting.
First opportunity for public participation. With no one registered, we will move on to treasurer's items. There's just the one item tonight, so may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Second.
Second by Mr. Newhoff. Ms. Jenkins?
The financials, we are 3 months into the fiscal year. These are September financials, and we're basically on plan in all areas. We are slightly up in our real estate tax collections. We'll monitor that to make sure whether that's timing or if it's just some of those other things that I have in a 5-year forecast. I should point out that the financials right now are still based on May 5-year forecast, and once the board updates and approves the October or fall forecast in November, these numbers would be updated to reflect that new forecast, or you're not likely to see that variance going forward. And we're slightly under in expenses, so in all, on plan for the fiscal year.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmaw?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. May I have a motion, please, for superintendent's items A through D? Mr. Bush, second by
Second.
Ms. Kalinowski. Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. Members of the Board of Education, the personnel action items are fairly standard for employee action. Donnelly to hire our winter coaches or to honor the volunteer coaches that graciously spend their time participating in this case winter sports. There is an action item to finish our complete circle associated to the retire rehire of Dwight Strigley as the coordinator of maintenance, custodial and grounds within our school district. So his retirement is actually on the agenda this evening, as well as his contract to rehire. So he will enjoy his 24 hours of retirement and come back to work the next day. Graciously on behalf of our school district, because we desperately need Mr. Strigley. I will say that for my own personal well-being. I do. Letter B this evening is to approve field trips for our students, both academic, co-curricular, extracurricular, and athletics. So the largest field trip that is on here is our 8th grade students are going to Washington, D.C. with Mrs. Laveau in November. So it's just around the corner that they leave on November 5th. Letter C, as always, we're very grateful for the wonderful donations that we received within our school districts. There's a variety of donations on tonight's agenda to honor those persons or companies or corporations that have donated so graciously to benefit our students. And lastly, letter C are the board policies I previously spoke about related to changes in the use of tobacco on school premises.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmaw?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. We are at our second opportunity for public participation, and with no one, they're probably all waiting in McCoy for the day of schools. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Kalinowski, Mr. Newmaw. Roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmaw?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. We are adjourned, and we'll see you at 6:30.